Makena stared at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands, 2 solid pink lines, and her mind screamed the impossible truth. She was a virgin, and somehow she was carrying her infertile billionaire boss's child. The clinic had called it a mistake, but as she stood in that marble bathroom, blood still fresh on the exam table from a procedure she never agreed to, one terrifying question consumed her. What if they did this to her on purpose? She stared at the 2 pink lines, like they were a death sentence. Not faint, not maybe. Solid, clear, final. The pregnancy test slipped from Makena's trembling fingers and clattered against the marble sink. The sound echoed too loud in the small staff bathroom of the Hale estate. She gripped the counter, knuckles white, legs shaking beneath her black maid's uniform. "No," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "That's not possible." But the test didn't care about impossible. 24 years old, virgin, black, staff, invisible, and now, somehow, pregnant. Her mind raced backward, clawing for an answer. She'd never been with anyone. Not once. Not even close. It was a choice she'd guarded her whole life. A promise to herself. To God. To her mother back in Mombasa, who raised her to believe her body was sacred. So how? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Outside the bathroom door, footsteps passed. Voices murmured. Somewhere in this glass fortress, her boss was probably sitting in his corner office, moving numbers that shifted entire markets. Laurent Hale, billionaire, untouchable, cold, infertile. The word had followed him for years. Everyone knew the story. Cancer survivor, life saved, future stolen. The chemo that rescued him destroyed his ability to have children. The tabloids called it tragic. The business world called it the end of a bloodline. Laurent never said a word about it, but Makena had overheard the whispers in the kitchen. The carefully worded warnings from Mrs. Eaton, the house manager. Never mention kids around Mr. Hale. Never ask about family. Just clean, smile, stay quiet. She'd followed every rule, kept her head down, did her job, stayed invisible, and now she was pregnant. Her hand moved to her flat stomach. Still, nothing to see. But something was there, growing, changing, real. She pressed her palm harder, as if pressure could make it disappear. "This doesn't make sense," she said to her reflection. Wide brown eyes, braids falling loose from the bun she'd tied at dawn. Skin darker than anyone else in this house. A nobody holding a truth that would destroy her. Then her mind caught on something sharp. The clinic. 2 weeks ago, that mandatory health screening, routine checkup, they called it. She'd signed forms she barely read. Let a doctor touch her in ways that made her skin crawl. Let them take blood, run tests, insert instruments. Standard procedure for all staff, they'd said. Mr. Hale takes care of his people. But what if it wasn't standard? What if someone had done something she didn't agree to? Her breathing quickened. Panic clawed at her chest. A knock rattled the bathroom door. "Makena? You in there? Mrs. Eaton needs you in the East Wing." She shoved the test into her apron pocket and wiped her face. "Coming." Her voice sounded steadier than her heart. She opened the door and stepped into the hallway, moving like a ghost through a world that no longer made sense. Somewhere in this mansion, Laurent Hale sat in his empire of glass and steel, believing he'd never have a child. Somewhere in this same mansion, Makena walked with a secret growing inside her that shouldn't exist. And somewhere between them, someone was lying. Because virgin maids don't get pregnant by infertile billionaires, not unless someone made it happen. 2 months earlier, Makena didn't know what glass could cost. She stood at the bottom of the driveway, one battered suitcase in hand, staring up at the Hale estate like it was a spaceship that had landed on Earth by mistake. The house didn't look real. It looked like something out of a movie. All sharp edges, floor-to-ceiling windows, white stone that gleamed even in the gray morning light. No curtains, no privacy, just glass everywhere. Like the man inside had nothing to hide. Or everything. "You coming? Or you gonna stand there all day?" Mrs. Eaton called from the front entrance, arms crossed, expression tight. McKenna swallowed and walked forward. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished driveway. She felt small, darker, out of place. Inside was worse. The ceiling stretched so high her voice would probably echo if she dared to speak. White walls, marble floors, art that looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas and called it genius. Everything was cold, clean, expensive, silent. "Live-in maid, Mrs. Eaton said, leading her down a hallway that seemed to go on forever. "You'll have your own room in the staff wing, meals in the kitchen, uniforms provided. Work starts at 6 a.m., ends when the work is done." McKenna nodded, clutching her suitcase tighter. "One more thing." Mrs. Eaton stopped and turned, her eyes sharp. "Mr. Hale values privacy. You don't ask questions. You don't stare. You don't bring your problems into his space. And most important," she paused, as if the next words carried weight, "you never mention children. Not in passing. Not as a joke. Not ever." McKenna blinked. "Why?" Mrs. Eaton's jaw tightened. "Because those are the rules. Follow them, and you'll do fine here. Break them, and you're gone before lunch." The message was clear. Stay invisible. McKenna had been good at that her whole life. Invisible in Nairobi. Invisible in Mombasa. Invisible on the plane that brought her to America with a work visa that felt like a fragile promise. She could do invisible here, too. She met Laurent Hale 3 days later. It wasn't planned. She was mopping the east hallway, humming softly to herself. When footsteps echoed behind her, she turned. He stood there, in a tailored black suit, phone in hand, eyes the color of winter storms, tall, sharp jawline, hair dark and perfectly styled. He looked like money, like power, like someone who could ruin you with a single phone call. McKenna froze, mop still dripping in her hand. "Good morning, sir," she managed, voice barely above a whisper. He glanced at her, just once. His expression didn't change. No smile, no acknowledgement, just a flicker of recognition that she existed in his space. Then he walked past her like she was furniture. She exhaled only after he disappeared into his office. That's how it was for weeks. She cleaned. He worked. They existed in the same house, but different worlds. She learned things about him without ever speaking. He drank black coffee. No sugar. No cream. He worked until 3 a.m. some nights. Light glowing from his glass office like a lighthouse. He never raised his voice. But people feared him anyway. She saw it in the way staff moved around him. Careful, quiet, tense. And she learned about the tragedy. It started with whispers in the staff kitchen. "Cancer survivor," one maid said, voice low. "Had it young. Chemo saved his life, but killed his chances of having kids. That's why he's so cold," another added. "What's the point of all this money if you can't leave it to anyone?" His father wanted grandchildren, built this whole empire for a legacy. And now? Nothing. Bloodline ends with him. Sad, someone murmured. McKenna stayed quiet, scrubbing dishes, but the words stuck. Infertile, broken, alone. She thought about him differently after that. Not as a billionaire. As a man carrying a loss no one could see. She never mentioned it, never asked, never broke the rules. But sometimes, when she passed his office late at night, she saw him staring out the window at the city below, and she wondered if all that glass was meant to keep the world out or trap him inside. She didn't know then that his tragedy and her body were about to collide in the worst way possible, because 2 months later, she'd be staring at a pregnancy test, holding the impossible truth in her hands. And the rules? They were about to shatter like all that glass around them. The announcement came on a Wednesday morning, casual and quick. Mrs. Eaton clapped her hands in the staff kitchen, pulling everyone's attention away from their breakfast. "Health screenings today. Mr. Hale is covering the cost. Private clinic down the road. It's mandatory." McKenna looked up from her tea. "Mandatory?" "Yes, Mrs. Eaton said firmly. "Everyone goes, no exceptions. Mr. Hale wants to make sure his staff stays healthy. Consider it a benefit." Free healthcare. In America, that was practically a miracle. None of them were going to argue. A week later, McKenna walked into Hale Private Medical Center with 3 other maids and the cook. The building didn't look like the public hospitals she'd seen in Nairobi. No long lines snaking out the door. No peeling paint. No exhausted nurses yelling names from clipboards. Just glass. Soft lighting. White chairs arranged like art. Quiet music playing like a spa. It felt expensive. Safe. Wrong. A nurse in pale blue scrubs handed McKenna a clipboard. Sign here, here, and here. Standard consent forms. McKenna stared at the papers. The print was tiny. Legal words she didn't fully understand. What exactly am I consenting to? The nurse smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Routine exam. Blood work. Pelvic check. All the basics. It's for your health. McKenna hesitated. Her pen hovered over the signature line. Is there a problem? The nurse asked, still smiling. McKenna thought about her visa, her job, her mother back home depending on the money she sent every month. She thought about Mrs. Eaton's sharp eyes and the unspoken threat behind every rule in that house. She signed. The exam room was cold. Sterile. The paper on the table crinkled too, loud when she sat down. A doctor walked in. Older, white coat, calm expression. He didn't introduce himself. Just glanced at the chart and nodded. McKenna Njoroge, he said, reading her name like it was a diagnosis. 24. First time here? Yes, she said quietly. Any medical history I should know about? Surgeries? Conditions? No. Sexually active? Her cheeks burned. No. He paused, looked up. No, I've never. She couldn't finish the sentence. It felt too personal, too exposed. The doctor's expression didn't change. Understood. We'll still need to do a full exam. Standard procedure. You're young and healthy, but we need to check everything. She wanted to leave, wanted to walk out and never come back, but she nodded instead. The exam was worse than she imagined. Lying back on the table. Feet in stirrups. Cold instruments. Gloved hands. Instructions to relax when every muscle in her body screamed to run. She stared at the ceiling, counting the tiles, trying to breathe through the discomfort. Almost done, the doctor said. She felt pressure, a sharp pinch, something cold sliding inside her. Her hands gripped the edges of the table. All finished, he said, pulling back. You did great. She sat up slowly, feeling violated in a way she couldn't name. It wasn't assault. It was medical, professional, legal. So why did it feel like something had been stolen? The nurse handed her a cup of water and smiled again. You're all set. Results will be sent to your employer. Have a good day. McKenna walked out of that clinic on shaky legs, feeling like the air had changed. She didn't know that in a locked freezer in the back of that building, a vial labeled with Laurent Hale's name sat waiting. She didn't know that her chart had been swapped with someone else's. She didn't know that while she lay on that table, trusting the system, someone had made a choice for her that would destroy her life. She went back to the mansion, back to the mirrors, marble, back to being invisible, not knowing that in 2 weeks she'd be staring at 2 pink lines, not knowing that a stranger in a white coat had just planted a billionaire's child inside her without asking. And the worst part? No one was going to believe her when she found out. The email arrived 3 days later, and it shattered everything. McKenna was sitting in the staff kitchen on her break, sipping cheap tea and scrolling through voice notes from her mother in Mombasa. Her phone pinged. She almost ignored it. But the subject line stopped her cold. Urgent. Clinical follow-up. Immediate contact required. Her chest tightened. She set down her tea, fingers trembling as she opened the message. The sender. Hale, Private Medical Center. Her eyes raced over the words. Dear Miss Njoroge, we are contacting you regarding a serious administrative error that may have occurred during your recent visit. Administrative error. Her stomach dropped. Chart mix-up. Incorrect procedure. Time sensitive. Confidential. The words blurred together. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear it in her ears. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. One of the other maids looked up. "You okay?" Makena didn't answer. She walked out into the empty hallway, phone clutched in her shaking hand, and dialed the number at the bottom of the email. It rang twice. "Hale, Private Medical Center. How may I direct your call?" The voice was too sweet, too calm. "This is Makena Nojoroge," she said, voice barely steady. "I got an email about an error, a mistake, a pause. Too long. Please hold." Elevator music played, soft, mocking. Then a new voice, older, colder. "Miss Njoroge, this is Dr. Caldwell. I oversaw your exam. I'm afraid there was a complication." "Complication. Not mistake. Complication." "What kind of complication?" she asked, gripping the phone tighter. He exhaled like he was about to drop a bomb and hoped it would land softly. "Your chart was temporarily mislabeled during processing. As a result, you may have received a procedure that was intended for another patient." Her breath stopped. "What procedure?" she whispered. Another pause. She could hear him choosing his words carefully. "An artificial insemination. With a private donor sample." The hallway tilted. The walls pressed in. Her knees went weak. "You put something inside me," she choked out. "Without asking? Legally, you signed consent forms for a full examination." "I signed forms for a checkup," she shouted. Her voice echoed down the empty hall. "Not for you to put someone's—" She couldn't finish, couldn't breathe. Dr. Caldwell's tone shifted. Professional, distant. "We understand this is distressing. We're prepared to compensate you for any discomfort and provide immediate corrective measures." Corrective measures. Like she was a broken machine. "Whose sample was it?" she demanded. Silence. "Whose?" she repeated, louder this time. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, she knew, she already knew. "It belongs to a very important private client," he said carefully. "We are working to resolve this discreetly." "Whose?" Makena said again, voice shaking with fury and fear. "Doctor!" Caldwell lowered his voice like the walls had ears. "Your employer," he said. "Mr. Hale." The world stopped. Her phone almost slipped from her hand. She pressed her back against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. Laurent Hale. The man who walked past her like she didn't exist. The man the whole world believed would never have children. The man whose house she cleaned, whose coffee she made, whose silence she lived in. And now, his sample was inside her body, without her permission. "You used my boss on me?" she whispered, voice breaking. "It was meant for a selected surrogate, doctor," Caldwell said quickly. "Your file was mixed with hers, a clerical error. We are prepared to pay you very generously for your distress. We will arrange a termination immediately. We will cover all costs. We will—" "Stop!" she cut him off. Her stomach churned, her mind spun. "So you violate my body," she said slowly, "and then pay me to erase the evidence? You must understand," Caldwell pushed, desperation creeping into his tone. "This client cannot know his reputation, his company, his last viable sample." She ended the call. The phone clattered to the floor beside her. She stared at the marble tiles, breathing hard, vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. Laurent Hale's last viable sample, the heir everyone said he'd never have. Inside her, because someone made a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. Her hand moved to her stomach, still flat, still normal, but something was there now. Something she didn't choose. Something that could destroy her life or change it forever. She didn't know which terrified her more. And somewhere in this glass mansion, Laurent Hale sat in his office, unaware that his impossible future was growing inside the Maid he'd never truly seen. But he was about to find out, and when he did, nothing would ever be the same. Dr. Caldwell called back 10 minutes later. Makena was still sitting on the floor, staring at nothing, when her phone buzzed in her lap. She almost didn't answer, but something in her gut told her this wasn't over. She pressed the phone to her ear. "What?" "Miss Njoroge," he said, voice tight with urgency. We need to discuss next steps. Immediately. Next steps? She repeated, voice hollow. You mean covering up what you did to me? I mean protecting both of us, he snapped. Then he caught himself, softened. Listen, I understand you're upset. You have every right to be. But we need to think clearly here. Clearly, she echoed. You want me to think clearly after you turned me into an experiment? He ignored that. We're prepared to offer you a settlement. $50,000. Cash. No questions asked. In exchange, you agree to a termination and sign a confidentiality agreement. You walk away. Start fresh. No one ever has to know. $50,000. More money than she'd ever seen in her life. Enough to send her mother to a better hospital. Enough to buy a small house back in Mombasa. Enough to never have to scrub another marble floor. But the words tasted like poison. You want to pay me to erase him, she said quietly. It's not a him yet, Caldwell said quickly. It's cells. Potential. Nothing more. And if you let this continue, it becomes a problem neither of us can fix. A problem, she repeated. Her voice was shaking now. That's what you're calling this? Think about your position, he said, desperation creeping in. You're a live-in maid, a foreign worker, no family here. No legal team, no resources. If this gets out, who do you think people will believe? You? Or one of the most powerful men in the country? The words hit like a punch. Because he was right. She was nobody. Laurent Hale was everything. This client cannot know, Caldwell continued, voice low and urgent. If he finds out his sample was used without authorization, it opens the door to lawsuits, investigations, media storms. His company could take a hit. My career is over. And you? He paused. You'll be dragged through every headline as the maid who tried to trap a billionaire. Her breath caught. I didn't trap anyone, she whispered. I know that, he said. But they won't care. The world loves a scandal. And you'll be the villain in it. Silence stretched between them. She thought about her mother, her visa, her future, everything she'd worked for hanging by a thread. But then she thought about the life inside her, the one she didn't ask for, the one that shouldn't exist, Laurent Hale's child, the heir everyone said would never come. And suddenly, she realized something that made her blood run cold. This wasn't just about money or reputation. This was about erasing proof. Proof that someone had done something unforgivable. If she let them fix this, they'd bury the truth forever. No one would ever know what they did to her. No one would ever be held accountable. She'd be another nameless woman whose body was used and then forgotten. McKenna, Caldwell said softly. Please, be smart. Take the money. Move on. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in her life, she chose herself. No, she said. The word felt like fire in her throat. Excuse me? Caldwell stammered. I said no, she repeated, louder this time. I'm not signing anything. I'm not erasing anything. And I'm definitely not letting you pay me to pretend this didn't happen. You're making a mistake, he hissed. Maybe, she said. But it's my mistake to make, not yours. She ended the call. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. But for the first time since this nightmare started, she felt something other than fear. She felt fury. They thought she was powerless, disposable, easy to silence. But they were wrong. Somewhere in this mansion, Laurent Hale believed he was the last of his line, that his legacy died with him. But McKenna knew the truth, and she wasn't going to let them bury it. If you've ever felt invisible, like your voice didn't matter, then you know what McKenna's feeling right now. Some stories deserve to be heard, not hidden. Don't let this one disappear. She stood up slowly, wiping her face, steadying her breath. She didn't know what came next, didn't know if she could survive what was coming. But one thing was certain. Laurent Hale was about to learn that the maid he never noticed was carrying the one thing he thought he'd lost forever. And the world was about to learn that some secrets refused to stay buried. McKenna tried to ignore it at first, Maybe the doctor was wrong. Maybe nothing had taken. Maybe her body would reject what they forced into her, and this nightmare would end on its own. But denial only worked for so long. Her period didn't come. Then, the nausea started. Sharp and sudden, the smell of bleach made her gag. Coffee, which she loved, suddenly smelled like burned rubber. Her breasts ached. She was exhausted all the time, like someone had unplugged her from the wall. She knew these signs. She'd seen them in cousins, aunties, neighbors back home, watched them press hands to their bellies and smile with secret knowledge. But McKenna wasn't smiling. She was terrified. One night, after the last staff member shuffled off to their rooms, she grabbed her jacket and walked to the 24-hour pharmacy at the corner. The fluorescent lights buzzed too loud. Everything felt too bright, too exposed. She kept her head down, moving through the aisles like a thief. When she reached the pregnancy tests, she grabbed the cheapest one and paid in cash, avoiding eye contact with the bored cashier. Back in the staff bathroom, she locked the door and stared at the box in her hands. Her reflection in the mirror looked pale, scared, young. She tore open the package with shaking fingers and read the instructions. 3 times. Wait 3 minutes. Do not read after 10. She did what the box said. Then she set the test on the sink and turned away, unable to watch. The seconds dragged. Her heart pounded so loud it drowned out the hum of the fluorescent light above her. She didn't have to wait long. When she finally looked, the second line was already there. Dark, bold, unmistakable, positive. Her knees buckled. She gripped the counter to keep from falling. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." But the test didn't care about her prayers. She stared at those 2 lines until her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. A virgin, pregnant, with her billionaire boss's child. It sounded insane, like something out of a bad movie. But it was real, happening, growing inside her right now. Her hand moved to her stomach, still flat, still hers, but not for long. She didn't know what to do, didn't know who to tell, didn't know if she even wanted this. All she knew was that her life had just changed forever. And somewhere in this house, Laurent had no idea, but that was about to change. Across the mansion, in his glass office overlooking the city, Laurent Hale sat at his desk, reviewing quarterly reports. Numbers, profits, projections, the language he understood best. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. An email from his legal team. Subject line: potential liability, fertility error involving staff member. His finger hovered over the notification. Something about the words felt wrong, heavy. He opened it. The first line made his stomach drop. Mr. Hale, we regret to inform you of a serious medical error at Hale Private Medical Center involving unauthorized use of your preserved genetic material. He read it again, slower this time. Unauthorized use. His genetic material. The words didn't make sense. He leaned forward, eyes scanning faster now. A clerical error resulted in the artificial insemination of a non-consenting staff member using your final viable donor sample. The patient has been informed. Legal exposure is significant. Immediate action required. Laurent's hand tightened around the phone. Staff member. His sample. Non-consenting. The room tilted. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. His mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Someone used his sample on a staff member, without consent. His last chance at a biological child. The one he'd stored years ago before chemo destroyed everything. The one he'd been told was safely preserved for a future he'd planned carefully. Gone. Used on someone he didn't know. Someone who worked in his house. Someone who had no say in what happened to her. His jaw clenched. He scrolled further. There was an attachment. A name. McKenna Njoroge. He froze. The maid. The quiet one with the careful smile and downcast eyes. The one who hummed in the hallways and made tea without sugar. Her. His phone buzzed again. A text from his head of security. Sir, Dr. Caldwell is requesting an urgent meeting. Says it's about damage control. Damage control. Like this was a PR problem. A stock price dip. something fixable with money and lawyers. But it wasn't. This was a woman's body, her life, her future, and somehow his legacy was now tangled with hers in the worst possible way. Laurent grabbed his jacket and walked out of his office, jaw set, mind spinning. He didn't know if McKenna was pregnant yet, didn't know if the procedure had worked. But if it had, everything was about to explode. And somewhere in the staff wing of his mansion, McKenna sat on the bathroom floor, staring at a positive pregnancy test, unaware that her boss had just learned the truth too. 2 people, 2 worlds. One impossible secret. And the storm was only beginning. Laurent had read 1,000 brutal emails in his career. Lawsuits, threats, hostile takeovers, market crashes at 3 a.m. This one made his blood run cold. He stood in his office, city lights glittering below him like broken glass, reading words that didn't belong in the same sentence. Wrong patient, staff maid, non-consensual procedure, your frozen sample, potential pregnancy. He read it again and again. His last viable sample. The one thing he had left of a future he thought was gone. The backup plan he never expected to use. His only biological shot at fatherhood, used on someone he didn't choose. Someone who didn't choose him, without consent. His hand tightened around the phone until his knuckles went white. The door to his office burst open. No knock, no warning. Lena, his stepmother, swept in like a storm in heels, perfectly styled hair, lips painted sharp red. She always looked like she was ready for a board meeting or a battle. Usually both. "It's being handled," she said, before he could speak. Her voice was clipped, controlled, efficient. Laurent turned slowly. "Handled?" She held up a folder. "Legal's already drafting the settlement. We'll offer her money, generous money, termination costs covered, full confidentiality agreement." She signs. She disappears. Problem solved. "Problem," Laurent repeated, voice low and dangerous. Lena didn't flinch. "Yes, a problem. One mistake, and a poor girl's unfortunate situation cannot destroy everything we've built." "A poor girl," he said. "You mean a woman who was violated in my name?" "She signed consent forms," Lena shot back. "Our lawyers say it'll hold up." "That's not an answer," he said. "Did she consent to being inseminated? Yes or no?" Lena's jaw tightened. "She signed paperwork for a medical exam. The scope of that exam is outlined in the fine print." Legally, Laurent interrupted, "doesn't mean morally. And you know that." For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then Lena stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Laurent, listen to me. One scandal like this, and the board will eat you alive. Shareholders will panic. Competitors will smell blood. Your father's legacy, my father's dead," Laurent said flatly. "And his legacy doesn't get to cost someone their dignity." Lena's eyes cooled. "You're letting guilt cloud your judgment. Maybe I should have felt guilty a long time ago," he said. She stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to know her name," he said. "You already know her name," Lena replied. "Makena Njoroge, Kenyan, 24, work visa, been here 2 months, lives in the staff wing." "She's nobody. She's under my roof," Laurent said. "That makes her my responsibility." "She's a maid," Lena snapped. "Not your responsibility. Not your charity case. And definitely not someone you should be involving yourself with emotionally." He turned away from her, staring out at the city. "What's her status? Is she pregnant?" Lena hesitated. "We don't know yet. Caldwell says it's too early to confirm. But if she is, then she's carrying my child," Laurent finished. The words hung in the air like a confession. Lena exhaled sharply. "Which is why we need to move fast. Offer her the money before she realizes what she's holding. Before lawyers get involved. Before the media turns this into a circus." Laurent's reflection stared back at him in the glass. Cold, hard, empty. He thought about the years of chemo, the sickness, the fear. The moment the doctor told him his future had been rewritten without his permission. And now someone had done the same thing to her. "Bring her to my office," he said quietly. Lena froze. "Excuse me?" "I said bring her to me," he repeated. turning to face her. I want to hear this from her. Not from lawyers, not from you. From her? That's a terrible idea, Lena hissed. Then it's my terrible idea to make, he said. You're letting your emotions compromise the company, she warned. Maybe it's time something bigger than the company mattered, he said. Lena stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. Fine, she said finally, voice tight with fury. But when this explodes in your face, don't say I didn't warn you. She turned and walked out, heels clicking like gunshots against the marble floor. Laurent stood alone in his office, heart pounding, mind racing. McKenna, the quiet maid, with careful hands and a soft voice, the one who'd been invisible to him for 2 months, and now she was the most important person in his world. Because if she was pregnant, everything he thought he knew about his future had just changed. And if someone had orchestrated this deliberately, if this wasn't just a mistake but something darker, then he needed to know the truth, even if the truth destroyed him. Somewhere in the staff wing, McKenna sat on her bed, staring at the pregnancy test she'd hidden in her drawer, unaware that in less than an hour, she'd be standing face to face with the man whose child she was carrying, and neither of them was ready for what came next. They put McKenna in a chair like she was on trial. Mrs. Eaton stood near the door, arms crossed, face unreadable. The head, security hovered by the window, stiff and uncomfortable. Fiona, Laurent's assistant, sat at the corner desk, fingers frozen over her laptop. Lena stood in the center of the room like a general preparing for war, and Laurent leaned against the glass wall, arms crossed, watching her with eyes she couldn't read. McKenna's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. McKenna, Mrs. Eaton began, voice careful. You recently visited our clinic for a routine health screening. There was an issue, a small error. Small? McKenna repeated. Her voice shook despite her best effort. Is that what we're calling it now? Lena stepped forward, smile sharp and cold. You may be pregnant as a result of a clerical mistake during your exam. Dr. Caldwell informed you of our offer. McKenna's hands clenched in her lap. She glanced at Laurent. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. I am pregnant, she said. The words dropped like a bomb. Mrs. Eaton's face went pale. Fiona's fingers slipped off. The keyboard. The security officer shifted his weight, suddenly looking anywhere but at her. Lena's expression didn't change. She'd already known. Are you certain? Laurent asked. His voice was steady, but something underneath it wasn't. 2 tests, McKenna said, meeting his eyes. Both positive. Laurent's jaw tightened. He looked away. Lena exhaled slowly, like she was dealing with a child who refused to listen. Then we need to move quickly. We're prepared to offer you a very generous settlement. $100,000. Immediate payment. In exchange, you agree to a termination and sign a confidentiality agreement. No baby, no headlines, no complications. $100,000. The number was bigger than before, bigger than anything McKenna had ever dreamed of, but it still felt like blood money. And if I say no? She asked quietly. Lena's smile thinned. Then you will be carrying a child that every enemy of this family will want to exploit. You'll be in danger. We'll be in danger. And we will fight you every step of the way. Custody battles, DNA tests, public scrutiny, legal wars that will bankrupt you before they even begin. McKenna felt the weight of the threat pressing down on her chest. Lena, Laurent said quietly. That's enough. But Lena didn't stop. You're a maid, McKenna. A foreign worker with a visa tied to this company. Do you understand what that means? 1 call, and you're on a plane back to Kenya. No job, no money, no future. Is that really what you want? The room went silent. McKenna's throat tightened, her vision blurred. But she didn't cry. She wouldn't give them that. You violated me, she said, voice trembling but strong. You turned my body into an experiment without asking. And now you stand here and talk about danger like I'm the one who created it. Mrs. Eaton looked at the floor. Fiona's eyes went wide. The security officer shifted uncomfortably. Lena's jaw clenched. We're trying to help you. No, McKenna said. You're trying to help yourselves. She stood up. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stay upright. You want me to throw money at this until it disappears? She continued. You want me to agree to erase something I didn't choose in the first place, but I will not decide today just because you're worried about your image. You don't have the luxury of time, Lena snapped. You're staff in a house that can crush you with one phone call. Be smart. Then fire me, McKenna said. The words shocked even her. Throw me out. Call your lawyers. Do what you do best. But I am not signing anything today. Silence. Heavy. Thick. Suffocating. Then Laurent spoke. She stays. Everyone turned to him. Lena's eyes went sharp. Excuse me? She stays, Laurent repeated, pushing off the wall. No pressure. No threats. No forced decisions. Not after what our clinic did to her. You're letting your guilt talk, Lena hissed. This is bigger than maybe? Laurent cut her off, voice cold as ice. It's time something bigger than the company mattered. Lena stared at him like he'd betrayed her. Mrs. Eaton looked stunned. Fiona's mouth fell open. McKenna stood frozen, not sure if she'd heard him right. Laurent turned to her. You don't have to decide anything today. You don't have to sign anything. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Not anymore. His eyes held hers, and for the first time since this nightmare began, McKenna saw something in them she didn't expect. Regret. Take your time, he said quietly. Figure out what you want, and when you're ready, we'll talk. Just you and me. No lawyers, no audience, no games. Lena's face went red. You're making a mistake. Maybe, Laurent said, but it's mine to make. He walked toward the door, then paused. Mrs. Eaton, move McKenna to a guest room on the 3rd floor. Comfortable, private. No one bothers her unless she asks. Mrs. Eaton nodded, still too shocked to argue. Laurent looked at McKenna one last time. I'm sorry this happened to you, and I'm going to make sure whoever's responsible pays for it. Then he was gone. The room erupted, Lena cursing under her breath. Mrs. Eaton scrambling for her phone, Fiona whispering something to security. But McKenna didn't hear any of it, because for the first time since this began, she realized something terrifying. Laurent Hale wasn't her enemy, and that made everything so much more complicated. They all left eventually, one by one. Lena stormed out first, heels clicking like bullets against the marble floor, fury radiating off her like heat. Mrs. Eaton followed, chewing her lip, throwing McKenna one last unreadable glance before disappearing into the hallway. The security officer nodded awkwardly and slipped out. Fiona lingered, gathering her laptop, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, she whispered, I'm glad you said no. Then she was gone too. The door clicked shut, and suddenly it was just McKenna and Laurent. The silence felt heavier than all the shouting that had come before it. McKenna stood near the chair they'd put her in, hands trembling at her sides, not sure if she should sit, stand, or run. Her heart was still racing. Her throat was tight. She just defied the most powerful people in the room, and somehow she was still here. Laurent stood by the window, staring out at the city below. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight. He looked like a man holding the weight of the world and trying not to let it crush him. You should sit, he said quietly, not turning around. I'll stand, she replied. You look like you might fall. I've been standing my whole life, she said. I'm not going to fall now. He turned then, slowly, and for the first time, she saw something in his face she hadn't expected. Exhaustion. Not the kind that comes from lack of sleep, the kind that comes from carrying too much for too long. That shouldn't have happened to you, he said. Which part? She asked, voice sharper than she intended. The part where your clinic violated me? Or the part where your stepmother tried to pay me to erase the evidence? He flinched. Both. She crossed her arms, holding herself together. Why did you tell me to stay? Because you were right, he said simply. You didn't create this mess. We did, and you shouldn't be the one punished for it. I'm carrying your child, she said, the word still strange on her tongue. Your heir. The one thing the world says you'll never have, and you're just going to let me walk around your house like nothing happened? No, he said. I'm going to let you make your own choice, like you should have been allowed to from the beginning." The words hit her harder than she expected. She wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the fire that got her through that room full of people trying to erase her. But something in his voice made it harder. "You don't know me," she said quietly. "You walk past me every day like I'm furniture, and now you're acting like you care?" "I didn't see you before," he admitted. "That's my fault. I built walls so high I stopped seeing people altogether. But I see you now, because I'm pregnant," she said bitterly. "Because you're under my roof," he corrected. "Because what happened to you happened in my name. And because pretending you don't exist won't change the fact that you do." McKenna stared at him, trying to find the lie, the angle, the game. But all she saw was a man who looked as lost as she felt. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she said, voice breaking slightly. "I don't know if I can raise this baby. I don't know if I even want to keep it. I don't know anything anymore." "Then don't decide today," he said. "Take time, think, rest, and when you're ready, we'll figure it out. Together." "Why would you do that?" she asked. "Why would you help me?" He exhaled slowly. "Because someone should have helped me when I felt this powerless. And no one did." The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. She thought about the headlines, the whispers, the tragedy everyone knew but no one talked about. Cancer, chemo, infertility. He'd lost control of his body too, just in a different way. Maybe that's why he understood. "I'm not signing anything," she said firmly. "Not today. Not until I know what I want." "Good," he said. "Don't." She nodded slowly, then turned toward the door. "McKenna," he called. She stopped, looked back. "If you decide you don't want this," he said carefully, "I'll respect that, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. But if you do," he paused, "if you do, I want to be part of it. Not as your boss, as his father." Her breath caught. His father. The weight of those words settled over her like a blanket she wasn't sure she wanted. She didn't answer, just walked out of the office, legs shaking, mind spinning. Behind her, Laurent stood alone in the glass room, staring at the door she'd just walked through. He'd spent years believing his bloodline ended with him, that he'd never hold a child who had his eyes or his name. And now, somewhere in his house, a woman he barely knew was carrying the impossible. But as he stood there, something darker crept into his mind, a thought he couldn't shake. What if this wasn't an accident? What if someone wanted this to happen? And if they did, what else were they planning? If you were in McKenna's position, would you trust him? Or would you run while you still could? Some choices don't come with easy answers. Across the mansion, in a locked office on the second floor, Lena sat at her desk, phone pressed to her ear. "It didn't work," she said coldly. "He's protecting her." A pause. "Then we moved to plan B," the voice on the other end replied. Lena's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Understood." She ended the call and stared at the photo on her desk. Laurent, young, healthy, before the cancer, before everything fell apart. "You should have taken the deal, McKenna," she whispered to the empty room. "Because now, you're not just fighting for yourself anymore. The storm was coming, and no one was ready for what it would destroy." McKenna's new room felt like a cage made of luxury. Soft white linens, a bed bigger than her entire room back in the staff wing, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a private bathroom with marble counters, and a bathtub that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like being moved from one box to another, just prettier this time. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. Her mind was a storm. Her body felt foreign. Everything had changed so fast she couldn't catch her breath. A soft knock on the door pulled her back. "Come in," she said quietly. The door opened. Laurent stood in the doorway, holding a tray. Steam rose from a bowl of soup, a plate of bread, a glass of water. He looked uncertain, like he didn't know if he was allowed to be there. "Mrs. Eaton said you didn't eat dinner," he said. "I thought you might be hungry." McKenna stared at him, at the tray, at the absurdity of a billionaire bringing her food. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know, he replied. But I wanted to. He stepped inside, setting the tray on the small table by the window. Then he stood there, hands in his pockets, looking like a man who didn't know what to do with himself. Can I sit? He asked. She nodded. He pulled a chair closer, but not too close. There was space between them, intentional, respectful. For a moment, there was just breathing, hers fast, his slow. How are you feeling? He asked. I don't know, she said honestly. Tired, scared, angry, confused, all of it at once. He nodded. That makes sense. Does it? She asked, looking at him. Because nothing about this makes sense to me, he exhaled. I know. Silence settled again. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. Why are you really doing this? She asked suddenly. You could have let Lena handle it. Could have made me sign the papers. Could have made me disappear. But you didn't. Why? Laurent looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke. Because I know what it feels like to have your body stolen from you, he said quietly. To wake up one day and realize someone made decisions about your future without asking, and no one cared how you felt about it. She saw something raw in his eyes, something broken. The chemo, she said softly. He nodded. It saved my life, but it took something from me I can never get back. And no one asked if I was okay with that trade. They just told me I should be grateful to be alive. Are you? She asked. Grateful? He considered the question. Most days, but some days, I wonder what my life would have looked like if I'd had a choice. McKenna felt her chest tighten. She understood that feeling more than she wanted to. I don't want to be your responsibility, she said. I don't want you to protect me because you feel guilty. I want to be a person, not a problem you need to fix. Laurent leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on hers. You are a person, he said firmly. That's what Lena forgot. That's what I forgot too. And I'm sorry it took this long for me to see it. Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You say that now, she said. But what happens when this gets hard? When the media finds out? When the board starts pushing back? When your stepmother makes your life hell? Will you still see me then? Or will I just be the maid who complicated everything? I won't lie to you, Laurent said. This is going to get hard, messy, maybe impossible, but I'm not walking away. Not from you, not from him. His hand hovered near her stomach, then pulled back. If you'll let me stay. McKenna looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the cold, distant boss anymore. He was just a man, scared, broken in his own way, trying to do the right thing even when he didn't know what that was. I don't know what I want yet, she said. I don't know if I can do this. Be a mother, raise a child, deal with all of this. Then don't decide tonight, he said. Take your time, think, rest, and whatever you choose, I'll support it, even if it's not what I want. And what do you want? She asked. He hesitated, then answered. I want a chance, he said, to be part of this, to be a father, to give this child the life I never thought I'd get to give anyone, but only if you want that too. Otherwise, I'll step back. I'll provide support from a distance. Whatever you need. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he meant every word, but trust was expensive, and she'd already paid too much. I need time, she said. Take all the time you need, he replied. He stood, moving toward the door, then stopped, turned back. McKenna, he said, you're not alone in this. Whatever happens next, you're not alone anymore. Then he was gone, and McKenna sat in that beautiful room, hand pressed to her still flat stomach, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or the bravest choice. Downstairs, in the shadows of the East Wing, someone watched the security footage of Laurent leaving McKenna's room. A figure leaned closer to the screen, eyes cold and calculating. He's getting attached, they murmured. Another voice responded from the darkness. Good. Attached men make mistakes. And when he does, we'll be ready. The screen flickered. The footage looped. And somewhere in the belly of the Hale estate, a plan older and darker than anyone realized continued to unfold. Because this pregnancy wasn't an accident, it was the beginning of something much worse, and McKenna and Laurent had no idea what was coming. Days passed in a strange quiet. McKenna moved through the mansion like a ghost. No more scrubbing floors, no more folding laundry. Mrs. Eaton had reassigned her duties to lighter tasks: dusting, organizing, things that didn't require bending or lifting. Everyone treated her differently now. Careful, like she might shatter if they spoke too loud. She hated it. But what she hated more was the waiting, the not knowing, the feeling that her body was doing something she hadn't agreed to yet. Laurent appeared more often now, not hovering, just present, on the balcony where she took her tea in the mornings. In the hallway outside the medical room, Dr. Miller had set up on the 3rd floor. In the kitchen late at night when neither of them could sleep. He didn't push, didn't ask the big questions, just small ones. How are you feeling today? Any sickness? Are you eating? She gave small answers. Fine. Some. Yes. But the truth was more complicated. She was tired all the time, nauseous at random moments. Her body felt like a stranger's, and every night she lay in bed with her hand on her stomach, trying to feel something, anything, proof that this was real. Then came the appointment. Dr. Miller was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands. She'd been brought in privately, discreet, professional. No ties to the clinic that had violated McKenna. We should be able to see something now, Doctor, Miller said gently. If you'd like. McKenna lay on the exam bed, shirt lifted, gel cold against her skin. She stared at the ceiling, afraid to look at the screen. Would you like someone with you? Dr. Miller asked. McKenna almost said no, but then the door opened. Laurent stepped in, hesitant. Mrs. Eaton said you were here. I wanted to, he trailed off. I can leave if you want. McKenna looked at him, at the man who'd gone from invisible boss to something she couldn't name. Stay, she said quietly. He moved closer, standing beside the bed, not touching her, just there. Doctor. Miller placed the ultrasound wand on McKenna's stomach and moved it slowly. The screen flickered with black and gray shapes that meant nothing to McKenna. Then Dr. Miller smiled. There, she said softly. That flicker. McKenna turned her. On the monitor, a tiny shape pulsed, a light beating in a dark sea. Is that? McKenna couldn't finish. Heartbeat, Doctor, Miller said. Strong. The sound filled the room. Fast, insistent, alive. Thump, 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 thump. McKenna's breath caught. Her eyes stung. She hadn't decided, hadn't said yes or no, but her body didn't care. It was already working, already building. She felt something warm by her hand. Laurent? He was standing beside her, fingers hovering near hers like he wanted to hold her hand but wasn't sure if he was allowed. His eyes were wet. That's... His voice broke. That's mine? The words hung in the air. Mine. Not it. Not the baby. Mine. McKenna's throat tightened. She looked back at the screen, at the tiny flicker that shouldn't exist. Studies say the heartbeat starts around 6 weeks. Doctor, Miller said softly, you're right on track. Everything looks healthy. Healthy? Real? Undeniable. McKenna's hand moved to her stomach without thinking, and, when it did, Laurent's hand finally closed around hers. Careful. Firm. I was told this would never happen, he whispered, eyes still fixed on the screen. That my body was done. That all I could leave behind were buildings and bank accounts. Doctors can be wrong, McKenna murmured, eyes still on the flicker. Or they can lie, Laurent said, almost to himself. Something in his tone made her glance at him, but before she could ask, the word slipped out of her mouth. Ours. The room went still. Laurent's head turned slowly. His eyes met hers. What? He whispered. McKenna's face flushed. She hadn't meant to say it, hadn't even realized she was thinking it. I said, she swallowed. Ours. Laurent's grip on her hand tightened. His jaw worked like he was trying to hold back something too big to contain. Ours, he repeated, voice thick. Dr. Miller quietly stepped back. giving them space. The heartbeat kept playing, steady, relentless, thump thump, thump thump. McKenna stared at the screen, at the impossible life she was carrying, and realized she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She'd claimed him, not just as hers, but as theirs. And Laurent had heard it. "Can I?" Laurent gestured toward her stomach, hand hovering. McKenna nodded, not trusting her voice. He pressed his palm gently against her belly. His hand was warm, steady, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she didn't feel alone. "Hi," Laurent whispered to her stomach. "I don't know if you can hear me yet, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." McKenna's vision blurred, because she realized something terrifying in that moment. She didn't want to do this without him, and that scared her more than anything. Dr. Miller printed a small black and white photo of the ultrasound and handed it to McKenna. "Your first picture," she said with a smile. McKenna stared at the grainy image, a blob, a shape, a heartbeat frozen in time. Laurent looked over her shoulder. "Can I have a copy?" he asked quietly. Dr. Miller printed another. They walked back to McKenna's room in silence, both holding their photos like sacred things. At her door, Laurent stopped. "Thank you," he said, "for letting me be there." "You're his father," McKenna said. The words felt strange but true. "You should have been there." Laurent's eyes softened. "I meant what I said in there. I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to." She nodded. "I know." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. "My private number, not the office line, just mine. If you need anything, day or night, call me." She took the card, fingers brushing his. "Good night, McKenna," he said. "Good night," she whispered. He walked away, ultrasound photo still clutched in his hand. McKenna stepped into her room and closed the door. She looked down at the photo, at the tiny flicker that had become real. "Ours," she whispered again. But as she set the photo on her nightstand, her phone buzzed. "Unknown number." She hesitated, then opened the message. "You think he cares about you? He cares about the air. The moment you're no longer useful, you'll disappear. Just like the others." McKenna's blood ran cold. Just like the others. What others? Her hands shook as she stared at the screen. Someone was watching. Someone knew. And whoever they were, they wanted her to know she wasn't safe. Not even here. McKenna stared at the text message until the screen went dark. Just like the others. Her hands trembled. Her chest tightened. She wanted to throw the phone across the room, wanted to scream, wanted to run. But where would she go? She was trapped in a mansion full of secrets, carrying a child she never asked for, surrounded by people who wanted her erased. And now someone was watching. She deleted the message, blocked the number, but the words stayed burned into her mind. Sleep didn't come that night. The next morning, Laurent found her on the balcony, staring at nothing, tea cold in her hands. "You didn't sleep," he said. Not a question, a statement. She didn't answer. He sat beside her, close but not touching. "What's wrong?" "Everything," she said quietly. "All of this. It's too much." "Then let me help carry it," he said. She finally looked at him. "Why? You don't even know me." He was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. "I know you drink your tea without sugar because you're saving every extra dollar to send home," he said. "I know you call your mother every Sunday at exactly 9 a.m. and lie about being fine so she doesn't worry. I know you hum when you mop the East Hall, always the same song. Something in Swahili I don't understand but sounds like home." McKenna's breath caught. "I know you fold the laundry corners so sharp they could cut glass," he continued. "I know you rearrange the books in my library by color instead of title, because you think it looks happier. I know you stand at the window in the staff kitchen some mornings and stare at the city like you're trying to decide if you belong here." Her throat went tight. "You noticed all that?" she whispered. "I did," he said. "I just didn't let myself care. Until now." She turned away, wiping her eyes before tears could fall. "You're only noticing because of him." "No," Laurent said firmly. "I'm noticing because I finally stopped hiding, and I see you, McKenna. Not the maid, Not the mistake. You. The words cracked something open inside her. She wanted to stay guarded, wanted to keep the walls up, but they were crumbling faster than she could rebuild them. I'm scared, she admitted, of all of this, of what comes next, of who's watching, of what happens if I let myself believe you. Then don't believe me yet, he said. Just let me prove it. She looked at him, really looked, and saw something she hadn't expected. Vulnerability. He wasn't the cold billionaire anymore. He was just a man, broken in his own way, trying to do the right thing even when he didn't know what that was. Have you ever had to trust someone when everything told you to run? Sometimes the hardest choice is the one that might save you. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Then we'll figure it out together, he said, one day at a time. His hand moved closer to hers on the railing, not grabbing, just offering. And for the first time since this nightmare began, McKenna let herself reach back. Their fingers touched, barely, but enough. Enough to feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. But neither of them saw the camera hidden in the corner of the balcony, or the figure watching the live feed from a locked office 2 floors below, smiling coldly at what was unfolding. Because while Laurent and McKenna were building trust, someone else was building a trap, and they were walking right into it. The pain came out of nowhere. McKenna was folding fresh towels in the laundry room, humming softly to herself, when a sharp cramp ripped through her lower belly. She gasped, dropping the linen. Her hand flew to her stomach. Another cramp, deeper, meaner. Her vision blurred. McKenna? One of the other maids rushed over. Are you okay? She tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. Then she felt it. Something warm and wet sliding down her leg. She looked down. Blood. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Her knees buckled. Voices shouted around her. Someone screamed for help. Someone else was calling 911. The world tilted sideways. Strong arms caught her before she hit the marble floor. Laurent. He scooped her up without a word, cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing. His face was pale, terrified. Stay with me, he said, voice raw. McKenna, look at me. Don't close your eyes. I'm losing him, she sobbed, hands pressed to her stomach. Blood stained her fingers. Please, I didn't even decide yet. Don't take him before I even decide. You're not losing him, Laurent lied, jaw tight. We're not losing him. Do you hear me? I won't let it happen. He was, moving fast now, carrying her through the hallway, past the staff staring in shock, past Mrs. Eaton frozen in the doorway, past the marble floors now streaked with red. Call Dr. Miller. Laurent shouted, Get the car! Move! McKenna felt herself slipping. The pain was everywhere now, sharp, burning, unrelenting. Laurent, she choked out. I'm here, he said. I'm right here. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't, he said, voice breaking. Don't you dare apologize. This isn't your fault. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Laurent carried her outside. The ambulance screeched to a stop in the driveway. Paramedics rushed toward them with a stretcher. She's pregnant, Laurent said immediately. 8 weeks. Bleeding. Pain. She's losing a lot of blood. They transferred her to the stretcher, strapped her in, checked her pulse, started an IV. Laurent climbed into the ambulance without asking. Sir, are you family? One of the paramedics asked. Yes, Laurent said without hesitation. I'm the father. The doors slammed shut. The ride to the hospital blurred into flashes, bright lights, cold hands, someone shouting medical terms she didn't understand. McKenna stared at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't decided if she wanted this baby, hadn't said yes, hadn't made peace with any of it. But now, facing the possibility of losing him, she realized something that broke her. She wanted him. She wanted him so much, it hurt worse than the pain tearing through her body. Please, she whispered to no one. To God, to the universe. Please don't take him from me. Laurent's hand found hers, squeezed tight. Stay with me, he said again. His voice was shaking now. Both of you. Please. Please don't leave. The ambulance doors flew open. They wheeled her into the emergency room. More lights. More voices. More hands. Someone was pulling Laurent away. Sir, you can't go back there. Like hell I can't, he snapped. Sir, please. McKenna reached Laurent. He broke free and grabbed her hand one more time. I'm not going anywhere, he promised. You hear me? I'm not leaving you. Then they pulled him back, and McKenna was wheeled through double doors into a room so bright it hurt. A doctor appeared above her, calm, professional. McKenna, I'm Dr. Reyes. We're going to take care of you. Can you tell me how much pain you're in? Everywhere, she gasped. Okay. We're going to do an ultrasound. Check the baby. See what's happening. Stay with me. The cold gel. The wand pressing against her stomach. The screen she was too afraid to look at. Silence stretched. Then Dr. Reyes exhaled. There's the heartbeat. McKenna's eyes snapped to the screen. The flicker was still there. Faint, but there. He's alive? She whispered. He's alive, Doctor. Reyes confirmed. But you're having a threatened miscarriage. Placental bleed. We need to stabilize you immediately. Will he make it? McKenna asked, voice breaking. Doctor. Reyes met her eyes. We're going to fight like hell to make sure he does. They prepped her for surgery. Sedation. Stitches. Stabilization. The last thing McKenna saw before the anesthesia pulled her under was Laurent's face through the window. Pale. Terrified. Hands pressed against the glass like he could reach through it and hold her. And in that moment, she realized something that would change everything. She wasn't just fighting for the baby anymore. She was fighting for them. All three of them. But as the world went black, a single thought haunted her. What if someone wanted this to happen? What if the bleeding wasn't an accident? And what if the real danger was just beginning? McKenna woke to beeping and sterile white. Pain throbbed low in her body, dull but present. Her throat was dry, her head heavy. She blinked slowly, trying to focus. Hospital room. Machines. IV in her arm. She swallowed hard. The baby? A nurse appeared, smiling gently. Still hanging in there. Strong heartbeat. It was close. But we stabilized you both. No moving for a while, okay? Relief crashed over McKenna so hard it made her dizzy. She pressed a shaking hand to her stomach. He's okay, she whispered. He's really okay. The nurse nodded and left quietly. When McKenna turned her head, she saw him, Laurent, slumped in the corner chair. Jacket off, tie loose, hair a mess, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. You're awake, he said, voice rough. He stood quickly, moving to her bedside. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck, she croaked. Maybe two. He huffed a weak laugh, but his eyes were red. You scared me. I scared myself, she admitted. He sank into the chair beside her bed, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. For a moment, he just breathed, like he'd been holding it in for hours. I thought I was going to lose you both, he said quietly. I thought I was watching the only future I'd ever have slip away in blood on a marble floor. McKenna's chest tightened. But you didn't. We're here. He looked up at her, eyes raw, vulnerable. You are, and I'm not letting anything happen to you again. You can't promise that, she said softly. Watch me, he replied. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with everything unsaid. Then Laurent's expression darkened. While you were in surgery, he said slowly, I heard something. McKenna's heart skipped. What? He leaned forward, voice low. Lena and Caldwell, arguing, in the hallway outside the surgical wing. What were they saying? She asked, pulse quickening. Laurent's jaw clenched. They thought they were alone, thought no one was listening, but I was around the corner, and I heard every word. Laurent, what did they say? He met her eyes, and the words that came next shattered everything. It was never a mistake, McKenna. She froze. What? The insemination, he said, voice tight with fury. Your file. My sample. None of it was an accident. They planned it. They planned you. Her skin went cold. Planned me? He nodded, hands curling into fists. Lena wanted an heir she could control. Someone whose mother had no power, no lawyers, no connections. A maid with a visa tied to our company? Perfect. Cheap. Replaceable. Easy to silence with the right amount of money. McKenna's stomach churned. What about you? Did you know? Pain flashed across his face. I knew there was a final attempt left. I knew they'd chosen a surrogate. But I didn't know they'd altered my medical files to make me believe it was my only chance. I didn't know they'd targeted my staff. I didn't know they would do this. McKenna's mind raced back over every moment. The mandatory clinic visit, the rushed forms, the calm doctor who brushed off her questions. The way Lena's first reaction had been strategy, not horror. You're saying I wasn't a mix-up, she whispered. I was a plan. Yes, Laurent said, voice breaking. A cruel one. She stared at the ceiling, tears sliding into her hair. They looked at me and saw a womb they could rent without asking. He flinched like she'd struck him. What are you going to do? She asked. Something hardened in his expression, something cold and dangerous. Burn them down, he said, starting with my own house. McKenna turned to look at him, really look, and saw a man who'd spent his whole life building walls, finally ready to tear them down. They'll fight you, she said. Lena, the board, everyone who benefits from keeping this quiet. Let them, Laurent said. I'm done protecting people who treat others like pawns. And me? She asked quietly. What happens to me in all of this? He reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. You stop being invisible. You stop being disposable. And you become exactly what you should have been from the start. What's that? She whispered. Protected, he said. Seen. Valued. Her throat tightened. For so long, she'd been nothing. A maid. A number on a payroll. A body in a uniform. But Laurent was looking at her like she mattered. Like she was worth fighting for. And that terrified her more than anything. Because if Lena planned this once, what would she do when she realized Laurent was no longer on her side? What if they come after me? McKenna asked. What if they try to finish what they started? Laurent's grip on her hand tightened. Then they'll have to go through me first. But even as he said it, they both knew the truth. This wasn't just about money or power anymore. This was war. And in the Hale family, wars didn't end quietly. Somewhere in the mansion, Lena paced her office, phone pressed to her ear. The girl survived, she hissed. And Laurent knows. A pause. Then we accelerate, the voice on the other end said. Cold, calm, familiar. How? Lena asked. Make her the villain. Make him choose. And when he does, we'll be ready. Lena smiled. Sharp. Deadly. Understood. The call ended. And the real game began. McKenna stared at Laurent like he'd just spoken a different language. Say that again, she whispered. Laurent's face was stone. It wasn't an accident. They chose you. On purpose. The words hit her like a physical blow. Chose me? Her voice rose. Chose me for what? To carry the heir Lena wanted, Laurent said, each word heavy. An heir she could control. One whose mother had no power, no voice, no way to fight back. McKenna's hands started shaking. How do you know this? Because I heard her admit it, he said. To Caldwell, in the hallway, while you were bleeding out in surgery. She said, we needed someone disposable, someone who wouldn't ask questions, someone whose disappearance wouldn't matter. McKenna felt bile rise in her throat. Disposable? Yes, Laurent said, fury burning in his eyes. And you? She asked, voice breaking. Did you know? No, he said firmly. I swear to you, I didn't know. I thought it was a legitimate surrogacy plan. I thought they'd found someone who'd agreed. I didn't know. They'd forged consent. I didn't know they'd targeted you. McKenna pressed her hands to her face, trying to breathe through the rage and betrayal flooding her chest. They looked at me, she said slowly, and saw a womb they could rent without asking. Laurent flinched. Yes, because I'm a maid, she continued. Because I'm foreign. Because I'm black. Because I'm nothing to them. You're not nothing, Laurent said fiercely. To them I am, she shouted. Tears streamed down her face now. They saw a poor girl with no options and decided my body was theirs to use. Like I'm livestock. Like I'm property. I know, Laurent said, voice thick. And I'm going to make them pay for it. How? She demanded. They have lawyers. Money. Power. What do I have? Me, he said simply. You have me, she laughed bitterly. You're one person. I'm the person who controls their access to everything, he said. The company, the accounts, the reputation. And I'm done letting them hide behind my name. McKenna wiped her eyes, trying to steady herself. What are you going to do? Laurent stood, pacing the small hospital room like a caged animal. I'm going to expose them. Every dirty secret, every forged document, every lie they told to make this happen. I'm going to burn my own house down if that's what it takes. They'll destroy you, McKenna said. Then I'll be destroyed, he replied. But I won't let them get away with what they did to you. She stared at him, at this man who'd been a stranger weeks ago, who'd walked past her like furniture, who was now ready to wage war for her. Why? She asked quietly. Why are you doing this? He stopped pacing, looked at her, really looked. Because someone should have fought for me when I was powerless, he said. When the chemo took my choices away. When doctors made decisions about my body without caring how I felt. No one stood up for me then, but I can stand up for you now. McKenna's throat tightened. And because, he continued, voice softer, you're carrying my son, and if I don't fight for his mother, what kind of father would I be? The words settled over her like a blanket, warm, terrifying, real. What if we lose? She whispered. Then we lose fighting, he said, not hiding. She nodded slowly. Okay, okay, he repeated. Okay, she said again. Stronger this time. Burn it down. A grim smile crossed his face. You're sure? They violated me, she said. They turned me into an experiment. They tried to erase me. I'm not letting them win. Laurent moved closer, sitting on the edge of her bed. Then we do this together. No more secrets. No more lies. We fight back. Hard. Together, she echoed. He reached out, and this time, she didn't hesitate. She took his hand. And for the first time since this nightmare began, McKenna didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a warrior. But as they sat there, making plans, neither of them knew the full truth. Because Lena hadn't just planned the pregnancy, she'd planned what came after. And the bleeding? The near miscarriage? That wasn't stress. That was a warning. In her locked office, Lena reviewed the hospital toxicology report Dr. Caldwell had just sent her. Trace amounts of medication in McKenna's blood work. Medication that could cause bleeding. Medication McKenna never took. Lena smiled. Phase 2 complete, she murmured. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He's becoming a problem. Accelerate the timeline. Lena's fingers flew over the keyboard. Understood. She'll be gone by the end of the week. She set the phone down and stared at the photo on her desk. Laurent. Young. Healthy. Trusting. You should have stayed obedient, she whispered. Now you'll learn what happens when you forget your place. Because in the Hale family, loyalty wasn't a choice. It was survival. And McKenna had just become the biggest threat to everything Lena had built, which meant she had to go, permanently. Laurent didn't waste time. The moment McKenna was stable enough to be moved to a private recovery suite, he made his first move. He called his personal lawyer, not the company's, his. I need an independent audit of Hale Private Medical Center, he said. Every file, every procedure, every consent form from the last 6 months, and I need it yesterday. Sir, that's going to raise flags. Good, Laurent cut him off. I want flags. I want alarms. I want everyone to know I'm coming. The lawyer paused. Understood. Next, he contacted an outside cybersecurity firm. Pull every email, text, and internal memo between Lena Hale, Dr. Caldwell, and anyone connected to staff health screenings. I don't care what it costs. Find everything. Within 48 hours, the cracks started showing. Emails surfaced. Cold. Clinical. Damning. Target identified. Visa dependent. No family support in country. Perfect candidate. Procedure scheduled under routine screening cover. She won't know until it's done. If complications arise, settlement. Offer ready. Confidentiality guaranteed. Laurent read them in his office, hands shaking with rage. They'd written about McKenna like she was a product, a transaction, a problem to solve. He forwarded everything to his legal team with one instruction: prepare for war. The board found out within hours. Emergency meeting. 17 executives crammed into the glass conference room, all staring at Laurent like he'd lost his mind. "You're auditing our own medical facility?" one board member demanded. "Do you understand the liability exposure?" "I understand we violated a woman," Laurent said coldly. "That's the only liability I care about." Lena stood at the far end of the table, arms crossed, face unreadable. "You're being emotional. This is bad business. This is bad humanity," Laurent shot back. "And I'm done pretending it's anything else." "You're going to destroy this company over a maid?" another executive asked. "I'm going to clean this company," Laurent corrected. "Starting with the rot." The room erupted. Some sided with Lena, others, quietly disgusted, backed Laurent. The company split down the middle, and then someone leaked the story. The headlines exploded overnight. Billionaire heirs made pregnant after alleged forced procedure. Hale Medical Center under investigation for non-consensual IVF. Scandal rocks Hale empire. Did they target vulnerable staff? McKenna's face was everywhere. Blurred, anonymous, but still there. She watched the news from her hospital bed, stomach churning. "They're calling me a victim," she said quietly. "A schemer, a gold digger, all at the same time." Laurent sat beside her, jaw tight. "Ignore them." "How?" she asked. "My face is out there. My life is out there. People I don't know are deciding who I am." "Then we control the narrative," he said. "We tell the truth, loudly, publicly, and we don't stop until everyone knows what they did to you." She looked at him. "You're really doing this. You're really going to war with your own family." "They stopped being my family the moment they decided you were disposable," he said. His words settled over her like armor. Outside the hospital, reporters camped out. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted at every passing car. Security doubled, tripled. Laurent hired private guards to protect McKenna around the clock. "This is insane," she whispered one night, staring out the window at the news vans below. "It is," Laurent agreed. "But it's also necessary." Lena fought back hard. Press releases, counter lawsuits, statements about disgruntled employees and misunderstandings. But the evidence was piling up, and the world was watching. Some people believed McKenna, some didn't. But everyone was talking, and in the middle of the storm, Laurent kept showing up. Every morning, every night. Sometimes just to sit, sometimes to bring food she barely touched, sometimes to hold her hand when the fear got too loud. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said one evening. "I know," he replied. "But I want to." "Why?" she asked for the 100th time. "Because you matter," he said simply. "And I'm done living in a world where people like you are treated like you don't." If you've ever watched someone fight for what's right, even when it costs them everything, you know how rare that is. Some battles aren't about winning. They're about refusing to stay silent. McKenna's throat tightened. "What if we lose?" "Then we lose knowing we tried," he said. "But I don't think we will." She wanted to believe him. But late that night, after Laurent left, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. She almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. The message was short, simple, terrifying. "He can't protect you forever. Accidents happen. Ask your baby." McKenna's blood ran cold. Her hand flew to her stomach. The bleeding, the near miscarriage. What if it wasn't stress? What if someone had made it happen? Her door creaked open. She looked up, heart pounding. A nurse stepped in, smiling, calm, "Just checking your vitals." she said sweetly. But McKenna didn't recognize her, and the syringe in her hand wasn't on any chart. "Who are you?" McKenna whispered. The nurse's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Someone who finishes what they start." She moved toward the IV line, and McKenna screamed. Security burst through the door before the nurse could reach the IV. 2 guards tackled her to the ground. The syringe clattered across the floor, liquid spilling onto the tile. McKenna pressed herself back against the bed, heart hammering, hand clutching her stomach. "Don't let her leave!" she shouted. 1 guard pinned the woman down, while the other called for backup. Within seconds, hospital security flooded the room. The fake nurse thrashed. "You don't understand! They'll come for me if I don't finish this!" "Who?" McKenna demanded. "Who sent you?" The woman's eyes went wide with fear. Not of McKenna, of something worse. "If I tell you, I'm dead," she whispered. Then she bit down. Hard. Too hard. Her body convulsed. Foam appeared at her lips. "She's got something in her mouth," 1 guard yelled. They tried to stop it, tried to save her, but within 30 seconds, the woman went still. Poison. McKenna stared in horror as medics rushed in, as the body was covered, as the room turned into a crime scene. Laurent arrived 10 minutes later, breathless and pale. "Are you okay?" He grabbed her shoulders, searching her face. "Did she touch you? Did she hurt you?" "No," McKenna whispered. Security stopped her. "But Laurent, she had poison. She killed herself rather than talk." His jaw clenched. "This is bigger than I thought. What do we do?" she asked. "We move you," he said. "Tonight. Somewhere no one can find you." They transferred her that night to a private medical suite in a secure building Laurent owned under a shell company. No records, no paper trail. Just him, McKenna, and a team of vetted staff who'd signed their lives away in NDAs. The suite felt like a luxury. Prison. Safe. Isolated. Suffocating. But at least she was alive. Bed rest became her new reality. Weeks stretched into a strange rhythm. No work, no distractions, just healing and waiting. And Laurent, he came every day, sometimes twice. At first, it was awkward, formal, 2 people forced together by circumstance. But slowly, something shifted. One evening, he showed up with a covered plate. "What's that?" McKenna asked. "Dinner," he said, setting it down. "I made it." She lifted the lid. Grilled chicken, vegetables, rice, everything slightly burned. She tried not to laugh. "You cooked this?" "Attempted," he corrected. "The chef was off. I didn't want you eating hospital food." She took a bite. It was terrible. Dry, oversalted. But somehow, it was the sweetest thing anyone had ever done for her. "It's awful," she said. "I know," he admitted. "Thank you," she said anyway. He smiled. A real one. Rare. Beautiful. After that, he kept coming. Not with fancy meals or grand gestures. Just presence. They talked, late into the nights when sleep refused to come. He told her about growing up in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. About his father's impossible expectations. About the cancer that came when he was 22 and stole the future he'd been promised. She told him about Mombasa. About her mother who worked 3 jobs to send her to school. About the dream of becoming a nurse that got buried under bills and visas and survival. "You still could," Laurent said one night. "Become a nurse when this is over." "When is it over?" she asked. "When you're safe," he said. "When he's born. When you get to decide what your life looks like without anyone forcing your hand." She looked at him. "You really believe that's possible?" "I have to," he said. "Otherwise, what's the point of any of this?" Feelings crept in slowly, unwanted, undeniable. The way he listened when she talked. The way he remembered small things. The way he looked at her like she mattered. Not because of the baby, because of her. It scared her. "What happens after?" she asked one night. "After what?" he replied. "After the baby's born. After the war ends. After all of this." Laurent hesitated. "I don't know. What do you want to happen?" She didn't answer. Because the truth was too dangerous to say out loud. She wanted him. Not his money. Not his name. Just him. The man who brought her burned chicken. The man who held her hand through ultrasounds. The man who was willing to destroy his own empire to protect her. But wanting him felt like betrayal. Like Stockholm Syndrome. Like she was confusing gratitude for something real. "I want to be free," she said finally. "To choose my own life." "You will be," he promised. But his eyes said something else. Something that looked a lot like hope. One night, when the moon was high and the room was dark, Laurent fell asleep in the chair beside her bed. Makena watched him, tie loose, hair messy, face finally at peace. She reached out, fingers hovering near his hand. Then she pulled back, because crossing that line meant risking everything. But as she lay there, hand on her growing belly, she realized something terrifying. She'd already crossed it. Somewhere between the fear and the fighting, between the rage and the healing, she'd started to fall, and there was no going back. The next morning, Laurent's phone buzzed with an email. He opened it, read the first line, and his face went white. "What is it?" Makena asked. He looked up at her, eyes filled with something she couldn't name. "DNA results," he said quietly, "from the baby." "And?" she pressed. He swallowed hard. "He's mine, biologically confirmed, but there's something else." "What? The sample they used?" he said slowly. "It wasn't from the clinic's freezer. It was taken recently, within the last 6 months." Makena's heart stopped. "But you said—" "I said I hadn't donated anything new," Laurent finished. "Which means someone took it from me, without my knowledge, without consent." They stared at each other. If someone had access to Laurent's genetic material without him knowing, then this conspiracy went deeper than either of them realized. And whoever was pulling the strings was still out there, still watching, still planning. At 21 weeks, something changed. Makena was lying on the couch in the secure suite, half asleep, when she felt it. A flutter, low in her belly, like fingers tapping from the inside. Her eyes flew open. She pressed her hand to her stomach and waited. Nothing. Maybe she'd imagined it. Then it came again. Stronger this time. A definite push against her palm. "Oh my God," she whispered. The baby was moving. Not just existing. Not just a heartbeat on a screen. Moving. Real. Alive. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. For weeks, she'd been carrying this weight. This fear. This uncertainty. But in that moment, feeling her son move inside her, everything became undeniably real. There was a soft knock at the door. "Come in," she called, voice thick. Laurent stepped inside, holding a takeout bag. "I brought soup from that place you liked. The one with the—" He stopped. "Are you okay?" "He moved," she said, smiling through tears. Laurent froze. "What?" "The baby," she said. "He kicked. I felt him." Laurent set the bag down so fast it nearly tipped over. He crossed the room in 3 steps. "Can I?" He gestured toward her stomach, hesitant. She nodded. He knelt beside the couch, placing his hand gently where hers had been. They waited. Silence stretched. "Maybe he's shy," Laurent said softly. Makena laughed. "Or stubborn. Definitely gets that from you," he teased. She was about to respond when it happened. A solid thump against Laurent's palm. His breath caught. His eyes went wide. "Again," he whispered. "Do it again." As if on command, the baby kicked once more. Harder this time. Laurent's face broke into the widest smile Makena had ever seen. Pure, unguarded, beautiful. "He's strong," Laurent said, voice thick with emotion. "He gets that from you," Makena replied. Laurent looked up at her. Their eyes met, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with the baby and everything to do with them. "Can I try something?" Laurent asked quietly. "What?" He shifted, resting his forehead gently against her belly. His hands cradled her stomach like it was the most precious thing in the world. Then he spoke, soft, intimate, like a prayer. "Hi," he whispered. "I don't know if you can hear me yet, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here when you're born, when you take your first steps, when you ask your first question, when you need someone to catch you. I'm going to be that person. McKenna's throat tightened. Your mom is the strongest person I've ever met, Laurent continued. And you're lucky, because she's going to teach you how to stand up when the world tries to knock you down. She's going to teach you that your voice matters, that you matter. Tears streamed down McKenna's face now. And me? Laurent's voice cracked. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you both. The baby kicked again. Hard. Laurent laughed, pulling back. I think he heard me. I think he did, McKenna whispered. Laurent looked up at her, eyes wet, smile soft. Thank you. For what? She asked. For letting me be part of this, he said. For not shutting me out. For giving me a chance I don't deserve. You deserve it, she said. You've earned it. He shook his head. I haven't, but I will. He reached up, hesitating, then gently took her hand. I mean it, McKenna, he said. I'm not walking away. Not from him, not from you. Whatever this becomes, we do it together. She stared at him, at this man who'd gone from cold boss to something she couldn't name, something that felt dangerously close to love. What if I'm not ready for that, she whispered. Then we take it slow, he said. As slow as you need. But I'll be here, waiting, hoping. Her heart hammered in her chest, because she realized something terrifying in that moment. She didn't want him to wait. She didn't want slow. She wanted him. Now. Fully. Dangerously. But before she could say anything, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His face went pale. What? McKenna asked. He stood abruptly, jaw tight. The forensics came back on the fake nurse. And? She had Lena's fingerprints on the syringe packaging, he said. And a wire transfer from an offshore account tied to my father's estate. McKenna's blood ran cold. Your father's dead. That's what I thought, Laurent said. His voice was hollow, scared. But the account's been active for the last 6 months. Someone's been using it. Someone who knows all our access codes. All our systems. Who? She whispered. Laurent looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw fear in his eyes. I don't know, he said. But whoever it is, they're not done, and they're closer than I thought. His phone buzzed again. A video file. No sender. He opened it. The footage was grainy. Security camera. Time-stamped 3 hours ago. It showed McKenna's suite. From the outside, someone had been watching, recording. Then the camera panned to a figure in the shadows. A man. Tall, suited, face obscured. He lifted his hand and waved. Then the screen went black, and a message appeared. She's not safe, and neither are you. See you soon, son. Laurent's hand shook, because he recognized the handwriting style, the phrasing, the tone. It was his father's, but his father was dead, wasn't he? The war ended not with a bang, but with headlines. Lena Hale resigns amid fertility scandal. Dr. Caldwell charged with medical fraud and assault. Hale Empire settles with victim in landmark case. McKenna watched the news from her suite, 8 months pregnant now, belly round and heavy. The story that had consumed her life was finally fading from the front pages. Lena was gone, disappeared into some luxury exile with a settlement that bought her silence but not her dignity. Dr. Caldwell lost his license, faced criminal charges, his career destroyed. The board issued careful statements about ethics and oversight, and deep regret. And Laurent stood in front of cameras and said something simple that made the world pause. We treated a woman like a tool. That ends now. No spin, no lawyers softening the blow. Just truth. People believed him. Inside the mansion, things changed, slowly but surely. Staff got real contracts, actual health care. Lawyers reviewed every form. Consent became more than fine print. McKenna saw the ripples reaching people who'd never even learned her name. And somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, her belly kept growing. Her son kept kicking, and Laurent kept showing up. Every morning. Every evening. Sometimes just to sit. Sometimes to read to her belly. Sometimes to hold her hand when the fear got too loud. One night, as the city lights glittered below them, Laurent sat on the edge of her bed, nervous in a way she'd never seen. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Always," she replied. He took a breath. "When this is over, when he's here, when the noise dies down, and we can finally breathe again." He paused. "If I ask you to build a life with me, not as a solution, not as a scandal fix, but as my partner, would that be insane?" McKenna's heart stopped. Build a life with him. Not just co-parent. Not just exist in the same space. Build something real. Her throat tightened. "What kind of life?" "Whatever kind you want," he said. "Slow, careful, messy. I don't care. As long as it's together. You, me, him." She stared at him. At this man who'd been ice and was now fire. "I'm not ready to answer that," she said softly. His face fell slightly. "I understand." "No," she said quickly. "I mean, I'm not ready because I'm full of hormones and half asleep and terrified every second of every day. Ask me when. He's born. When I'm clear-headed. When I can think without my body doing all the talking." Laurent's eyes searched hers. "So it's not a no?" "It's not a no," she confirmed. "It's a wait." He nodded slowly, then smiled. Small, hopeful. "I can wait." "Can you?" she asked. "For you?" he said. "I'd wait forever." Her chest ached with something too big to name, because she realized in that moment that she wasn't waiting to decide. She'd already decided. She just needed to be sure it was real, that it wasn't gratitude or fear or circumstance making her feel this way. She needed to know that when she said yes, it meant something. The weeks passed. Her belly grew impossibly larger. Movement became difficult. Sleep became a myth. But Laurent stayed. And somewhere between the exhaustion and the anticipation, McKenna realized something that both terrified and freed her. She loved him. Not the idea of him. Not the safety he provided. Him. The man who burned chicken. The man who whispered promises to her stomach. The man who destroyed his own empire to protect her. She loved him. And that changed everything. One evening, as she sat on the couch, hand on her belly, Laurent came in with an envelope. "What's that?" she asked. "DNA results," he said quietly. "Final confirmation. From an independent lab. No ties to anyone." She took it, opened it with shaking hands. The results were clear. Laurent Hale, biological father, 99.9% match. But there was a second page. A note from the lab director. "Secondary genetic markers detected. Partial match to another individual in our system. Flagged for your attention." McKenna looked up. "What does this mean?" Laurent's face was grim. "It means someone else's DNA showed up in the sample. Someone related to me." Her blood ran cold. "Who?" "I don't know yet," he said. "But I'm going to find out." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Run a full genetic comparison," he ordered. "Cross-reference with everyone in the Hale family database. I don't care how long it takes. I want answers." He ended the call and looked at McKenna. "Whoever did this," he said, "they're family, and they're still out there." McKenna pressed a hand to her belly as the baby kicked hard, like he could sense the danger. "What if they come for him?" she whispered. "Then they go through me first," Laurent said. But even as he spoke, both of them felt it. The weight of something unfinished, something darker, because the war might have ended. But the real enemy had never shown their face. If you've ever felt like the storm passed but the danger didn't, you know that feeling. Some endings are just beginnings in disguise. Don't look away. Now. That night, Laurent's phone buzzed. The lab results. He opened the file, and his face went white. "What?" McKenna asked, heart pounding. He turned the screen toward her. "Genetic match. 50% sibling relationship confirmed. Secondary DNA belongs to Marcus Hale." McKenna's breath stopped. "Your brother?" "I don't have a brother," Laurent said. But the DNA didn't lie. Somewhere out there, Laurent had a sibling he never knew existed, and that sibling had been involved in McKenna's insemination, which meant this wasn't just about an heir. It was about replacing Laurent entirely, and whoever Marcus Hale was, he was coming. Labor started at midnight, not gently, not slowly, like a war. McKenna woke to pain so sharp it stole her breath. Her water broke in a rush. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands. "Laurent?" she gasped when he answered. "It's time." He was there in minutes, hair wild, eyes wide, completely terrified. "I've got you," he said, helping her to the car. "We're going to be okay." But labor wasn't okay. It was brutal, endless, a battle her body fought for hours. She screamed, cried, cursed in Swahili and English. She told Laurent she hated him, hated his genes, hated every choice that led to this moment. He held her hand through all of it, let her squeeze until his fingers went numb. "Good," he said through gritted teeth. "Hate me, squeeze harder, break my fingers if you need to." The hours blurred. Pain, breathing, pushing, more pain. Then, at 3:17 in the morning, everything changed. A cry filled the room. Small, furious, alive. The doctor lifted a tiny, red, slippery baby and placed him on McKenna's chest. She looked down and forgot how to breathe. He had her nose, Laurent's eyes, tiny fists that waved at the world like it owed him an apology. "Hi," she whispered, sobbing. "Hi, baby. We've been through so much, and you've only been here 10 seconds. Laurent leaned over them, tears streaming freely down his face. "He's perfect." "He is," she agreed. The nurses cleaned him gently, weighed him, wrapped him in a soft blanket. But McKenna never took her eyes off her son. The baby she didn't choose, the baby she almost lost, the baby she now couldn't imagine living without. Laurent sat beside her bed, staring at their son with wonder. "What do we name him?" he asked softly. McKenna thought for a moment. "Kamau. It means quiet warrior." Laurent smiled. "Kamau hail. Kamau and Jiroge hail," she corrected. "He gets both of us." Laurent's eyes softened. "Both of us." The room fell quiet. Just the three of them. A family built from chaos. Outside, the world kept spinning. Headlines, scandals, enemies in the shadows. But in that hospital room, none of it mattered. When Kamau finally slept, Laurent turned to McKenna. "Can I ask you now?" he said quietly. She knew what he meant. "Ask me," she said. He took her hand, careful, reverent. "Will you build this life with me?" he asked. "Not because you have to, not because of him, but because you want to. We can take it slow. We can mess up. We can try again. But we do it together. You, me, him." McKenna looked at their son, at the man who'd fought for them, at the future she never thought she'd have. "Yes," she said. Laurent's breath caught. "Yes?" "Yes," she repeated, stronger now. "On one condition." His heart pounded. "Anything. You never forget how this started," she said, "and you help me tell it right." "Why?" he asked. McKenna smiled, sad, fierce, hopeful. "Because one day," she said, "people are going to hear our story and ask, how did a virgin black maid become pregnant for an infertile billionaire boss?" She looked at Laurent, then at Kamau, then back. "And the real answer?" she continued. "The one about corruption and power, and a woman who refused to disappear. That's the story that's going to blow their minds." Laurent leaned forward and kissed her forehead, gentle, promise-filled. "Then we'll tell it," he said, "together." McKenna closed her eyes, son in her arms, Laurent beside her. For the first time in months, she felt safe. But outside the hospital, in the shadows of the parking garage, a figure watched the third-floor window. Marcus Hale, tall, sharp suit, cold smile. He pulled out his phone and typed a message. "The heir is born. Phase 3 begins." He hit send. Then he walked to his car, started the engine, and disappeared into the night. Because while Laurent thought the war was over, Marcus knew the truth. It was just beginning. And this time, he wasn't playing for money or power. He was playing for everything. The Hale legacy, the company, the child. And McKenna and Laurent had no idea what was coming. Because the most dangerous enemy isn't the one you see. It's the one who's been watching all along, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment had finally arrived. Somewhere in the city, in a penthouse no one knew existed, an older man sat in the dark, watching security footage of the hospital room, watching McKenna hold the baby, watching Laurence smile like he'd finally won. The man's face emerged from the shadows. It was Laurence's father, alive. He'd never been dead. And everything that happened, the insemination, the threats, the bleeding, the fake nurse, had been his design. A test. To see if his son was strong enough to protect what mattered. To see if the maid was worthy of the Hale name. And now, watching them together, he smiled. "Well done, son," he whispered. "You finally learned to fight." He stood, adjusting his tie, and walked toward the door. Because the game wasn't over. It was evolving, and the next move belonged to him. The end. Or is it?